I'd like to introduce Dr. Steve Hall from Washington in the United States. Thank you for joining me, Steve.
Oh, my pleasure.
Could you tell me when you first heard about LDN?
Well, I don't remember exactly the time. It was probably 3 or 4 years ago. I remember the patient as a guy's wife brought in a big, thick folder, 3-ring binder of information on it, and she wanted her husband to try it because he had just been diagnosed with Parkinson's syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And so she left the folder with me, and I looked through it and double-checked some things on the internet, and so I learned about the LDN that way. But interestingly, he never came in as a patient. So
Really?
So I started So I started using it on other people, and my practice is full of people with like fibromyalgia and autoimmune diseases and chronic pain syndromes and just things that most conventional medicine just doesn't have very good answers for, and a lot of them have chronic inflammatory problems, and so I've found that the LDN has been very helpful for most of those people.
Mm-hmm. How many patients would you say you've treated with LDN?
Oh, well over 100 by now. I have kind of a small practice because I do 1-hour visits with patients, so I wouldn't know. I mean, it's got to be over 100, probably 200 to 300 maybe.
Wow, that's a high number. What would you say the results of taking LDN for those patients have been?
Well, just in my clinical experience with it, when it works really well.
Mm-hmm.
But it hasn't worked for everybody. It works maybe probably 3/4 of the time, I would say, in my patients. So it's always worth a try, I think, because it's so safe.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, when it works, it's really great. A really good example is my older brother, actually, who's a nurse practitioner, and he's very solidly implanted in the whole conventional medical model. And he was taking a statin medication for his cholesterol and starting to get muscle pain from it. And instead of stopping the statin, he stayed on it, and he came very close to dying from the total body breakdown of his muscles from the statin. And he had to be on prednisone for a year, and he still wasn't doing well. And I told him about the LDN, and he was game enough to try it, and it's worked so well for him. He's off prednisone, and he's almost back to normal. But it's been 2 or 3 years for him to heal up all of his muscles and stuff. So, but the people it seems like it works really well in too are people with fibromyalgia that just don't get all the way better when we work to heal their gut and get the allergies out and support their adrenals and do all that other kind of work with them.
Mm-hmm. What about Hashimoto's and thyroid problems? Have you used it for that?
Not so much, because most of those folks get better when they stop gluten and heal their gut.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I still think of LDN as kind of a symptomatic treatment. And, if you can get the inflammation to stop, that's better than just treating the inflammation. But if you can't figure out how to get the inflammation to stop, then LDN is an excellent way to treat the inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd try first to figure out the real root cause and treat that, and then save symptomatic treatments for either while we're getting things done or if we can't quite figure it out.
Mm-hmm. And have any of your patients experienced any negative side effects?
I have one patient. It's interesting. She has MS. She's had MS for many, many years, and occasionally has really bad nights where her right leg just spasms all the time and keeps her awake. That sort of comes and goes, and I'd had some pretty good success with LDN and other folks with MS, and so I asked her to try it, and she took 1 milligram, and she had the absolute worst night of spasms she'd had in her whole life. And I kind of thought that was a good sign that it was doing something for her, but she totally refuses to even consider taking another dose.
Mm.
So I'm not sure why it affected her so strongly. But so that's the main example that comes to my mind. But most people, when we start out slowly and build it up as they tolerate it, it's not most people don't have any problem with it.
Mm-hmm. And would you say if 3/4 of the people who take LDN it works for, what would you say your dropout rate is? Do people after a while stop taking it, or once they've found it works, they continue?
Yeah, a number of people are still on it. I've had some people stop it after 8 to 10 months, generally because they've gotten better in other ways in that time. So, but a lot of people for whom it works, they just like to stay on it.
Mm-hmm. And if people in your area would like to get hold of you, do you have a web address?
I do. It's just my name. It's www.stephenmhallmd.com.
Thank you very much for sharing your experience.